Okay, start Doris.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I hope you're feeling well and comfortable here. And let us start the interview.
Okay, great. Let's start.
Recently, you have started with coaching, or should I say, how long ago was it?
It was about 3 years ago.
3 years ago.
Yeah.
And so, why is this coaching this important to you?
Wow, that's a tough question. I've gone personally to quite a lot and different therapists in my life to try to deal with personal trauma that I've had in my family and growing up. And although I did receive quite a lot of, I would say, relief, it was temporary, and it was also not addressing some of the main issues that I actually learned later that I had. I also think that kind of working on oneself is like a lifelong journey. We don't really come to a point where we're fully developed and matured and there's nothing to change or heal or even release as potential. So I found coaching kind of in an interesting way. I joined a coaching academy, and I really liked the questioning that coaching has because I also appreciate philosophy and psychology, and a lot of philosophy, especially Socrates and Plato, they asked a lot of questions and they pursued truth. And I found that coaching, which allows you to ask questions that allow the person to see their truth, are really a new way of helping people help themselves, basically.
What's the difference then between therapy and coaching?
There's a big difference in the sense that a therapist is really trying to help you heal the past and really look at the past, meaning stay there as long as you need to process any pains or trauma or any uncomfortable experiences that you had that are now prohibiting you from living your life. So usually people say, and I kind of agree, that therapy is focused on the past, although there are new therapeutic models which are now using aspects of coaching to help people because they also realize, and therapeutic community is growing and psychology is growing. So instead of maybe psychoanalysis that would last 5 to 10 years for someone to heal, now somebody wants maybe quicker or more efficient ways to transform their pain. So in that sense, therapy, I think, is very helpful when people are in deep trauma. I think you need slowness. You don't need a lot of challenging questions. You need a safe and secure space to kind of reach your pain. Coaching, I think, is for people who have dealt with maybe the majority or half at least of their big traumas in life, and now would like to kind of step further and explore themselves and understand why they are not really reaching some of their desires. I don't really like to say potential because honestly, and this is kind of personal, my mom used to always say, oh, if you just had enough motivation, you could reach your potential. And although that sounds kind of empowering, maybe in her mind, it was really disempowering because it meant, oh, I don't have motivation, so I will never reach my potential. So there are ways that we can empower people by helping them to love what they have now. And I think a part of coaching that I appreciate is uncovering the strength and the beauty that people have now in their current situation, not when they heal something, not when they become famous, not when they figure out something. So coaching for me is it's still very important to create a safe space. I think that no transformation can happen without a safe space. But I would say there is more of motivation to change. People, when they have a goal, sometimes they will find an answer quicker. And we know this, I know this, for example, when I was little, that I knew that after I finished my homework, I can go ride my bike. And I would finish the homework
And
quicker, yeah, and have my freedom. So sometimes the desires that people have actually propel them into action. So, and I, as a coach, am there to empower them to really feel their desires and to see the strengths with which they can achieve those desires.
Well, as you said, we work on ourselves and fight through all our life, which is a life-lasting job to do. But how long does coaching take?
Well, it really depends what a person wants to accomplish. For example, I have 90-minute intensive sessions where I can help somebody transform a negative belief or a negative emotion in one session. And then look at possibilities and solutions after they've transformed that. If somebody has had, it really depends on the person, and if somebody has had quite a lot of setbacks in life, then we need maybe a few sessions to look at these setbacks. Also, what's important in coaching, which sometimes is forgotten, is that we as humans, we also need to integrate what we feel and what we have felt. Just because, and I've had a lot of situations with different coaches where I was coached and I didn't appreciate this, where there would be some kind of transformation, but there wouldn't be a safe space to integrate this. It was like, okay, now you go out and you do something. And when we transform, we are quite vulnerable. And in that state, we do need like human support. We need somebody to support us in that transition. So as well as transformation, as this integration, I feel is key to actually having something successfully resolved.
Well, having a lot of friends, I will not call them your patients, and the experience you have, could you maybe state whether it is easier, and I presume it is, to work then with people who have gone through therapy already, or maybe just the opposite? Would you suggest a combination of therapy and coaching? Or could coaching be maybe the new cycle of therapeutic sessions that is the future is bringing us?
That's an awesome question, and I would say all of the above. Absolutely. It would depend for sure on the person, and when I speak to somebody prior to starting any coaching program, I would evaluate whether I feel that they would either benefit to have therapy together with coaching, or I would tell them maybe that I feel that there's some deeper pain that needs to be addressed in therapy. And this has happened quite often, and I do want to caution people not to jump too easily to coaching and not to dismiss therapy, because coaching is positioned today as this master way of changing yourself. But I have seen a lot of collateral damage of people who need therapeutic help jumping into coaching and putting themselves on the line and committing to some goals which they in their heart really are not ready for. So sometimes coaches can trigger people to kind of make them believe like, yes, they can do it, but they don't see the full picture where the person really needs some stabilizing in some area of their life before they can really feel comfortable to kind of step into this role which they would like.
Have you ever rejected any patients?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, that's a really strange situation because I really want to help everybody, and it seems weird. It seems weird where someone would come to me, but I've experienced that people have were in states which I would call maybe hysterical states or states of deep disorientation, where really there's a need maybe even for medication or for some heavy stabilizing therapy before they can actually work on anything. So yes, I did reject, and I usually would suggest, that to them, yes, go to therapy, or I think that you would benefit from this, because I don't feel like it would be even in line with my integrity to work with you now, because I'm not a therapist.
And what brought you to coaching?
Uh, Probably the disillusion with therapy, because I've done therapy for so long. I really gave it like not one try, like over 20 years. I've really researched therapy because it is my passion, like human emotions, human transformation, um, release of suffering, and people finding their way in life. For me, it's important personally, and for everybody else. So um, I have trained in therapeutic ways of helping people. I've also trained with kind of things that are not generally considered therapy, but like theater workshops and some personal development workshops where through play people are learning how to change. So I think we are really coming to a space now where there are many modalities that people can heal and basically thrive in life. And it's really up to a person to kind of feel what feels right to them and which person feels right to them. In my case, I've realized that a lot of lack of help I felt that was happening in therapies because there was no understanding of what a highly sensitive person is. And this is something that changed the way I work and that changed my life, to understand that I am that kind of person. And actually, I'm a coach for the same kind of people, highly sensitive people. This is kind of a new thing, and it's something that's been brought by Elaine Aron with her book Highly Sensitive People. And the research she did is really mind-blowing, that we have about 20% of people out of 100 who are highly sensitive, which means that they would be more sensitive to noise, to overwhelm, to emotional overwhelm, to spending too much time with people. This is kind of, let's call it the bad or the difficult side of being a highly sensitive person. Whereas on the other side, they would have the capacity, and this was proven through research, which really blew my mind, for extremely high levels of awareness and empathy that other people don't have. Meaning that we are really set as the helpers and the servers and those who are helping others understand themselves, because we are on the forefront of this. We have to deal with our high sensitivity so that we can teach others how to deal with their regular sensitivities. And I think it's kind of a leadership position that I'd like to position highly sensitive people. And it's becoming this way in the world, where companies and corporations are seeing that people don't work in the same way, and that highly sensitive people need really empowering environments in order to thrive. So for us, the key for transformation is the environment, and often in therapy they would say, if you're in, it really doesn't matter in which environment you are, you have to kind of be stable within yourself. But if you're a highly sensitive person, the level of possibility of acting who you are, of being who you are, and contributing to society varies tremendously. So there were research studies that were made where a highly sensitive person, if they were, let's say, neglected or abused when they were young, they would have tremendously difficult time later in life. But if they were living in a positive, empowering environment, they would be the leaders. They would be the people who would invent new things, new ways of doing. So the environment really does matter. And I think if that's one thing I'd like the people to understand, the general population, is that by creating these environments which are empowering for highly sensitive people, and by understanding that we are a part of population, no matter how different we are, the society will benefit, because the way we work might not be an 8 or 9 hour day, because we can't stand that long periods of being in one place. But if we work for 2 hours per day, what we think in those 2 hours will benefit many.
Well, then this leads me to the conclusion that highly sensitive people are very intuitive.
Yes, they are very intuitive, and I connect intuition with intelligence as well. There are people who are highly intuitive and maybe are not so prone to rational thinking. But I think highly sensitive people are both. They are usually quite intelligent and quite intuitive. And these two things intersect, where you can't tell whether they've made a decision out of intuition or because of their high intelligence to connect the dots. So, and intuition, there's also a lot of research coming up now where it's not considered like this magical thing that some people believe or not. It's actually the sense that comes from us as, let's say, our animal background and instinct, which helped us survive in various situations, and that one people or other people are basically more prone to be aware of that. It's just greater awareness. And since highly sensitive people are more aware, the more aware you are, the more connections you can make, and then the better decisions you can make. So it's like intelligence, intuition, and then decision making above that.
How do you reach out to them?
Who?
To these highly sensitive people, your clients?
Well, I'm basically really active on Facebook, and I have my own group called Discover Your Brilliance. And I have a Facebook page also. I am a soul discovery catalyst and a coach. And I'm really active daily. I feel like I also publish in Huffington Post and Thrive Global. So I'm quite active in social media and media where I write about experiences from the point of view of a highly sensitive person. And I try to give as many information and tips on how to start to believe in who you are. Because the biggest enemy for a highly sensitive person is basically their own disbelief in their difference. So the more they try to be like everybody else, the more in pain they are. So understanding and accepting who we are and basically really loving who we are, then you can blossom. It's basically like a child. If you really love a child, all the best qualities will come out of it.
You have an MA in film and media, and as you said, play can be a very good source in healing. How about these new media? I mean, you use new media to reach out to people, and then they use it to reach out back to you and to answer your questions, your beliefs, to put out their posts, which is not very easy. How do you cope with it, and what position would you place the new media as a negative or a positive side? And take please in consideration both both kinds of people that accept it and that do not accept coaching or your thoughts or disagree with your thinking and so on.
Well, Facebook is like an arena. And in an arena you can meet pretty much anyone. I think it's more like who you want to meet. When people are starting in coaching or any kind of reaching out to people to try to help them understand more or raise their awareness or just maybe teach them even something. And what I did at the beginning is I really wanted to speak to everybody because you think I'm quite democratic, so I really want to speak to everybody. I feel everybody deserves to be spoken to. However, when I learned that I'm a highly sensitive person, I realized that there's not, that my thoughts are not going to be welcomed everywhere. I also realized to what level of, let's say, different thinking or, let's say, even adverse comments I can take as a human being. So I'd say Facebook is basically what you make out of it and this new media. So I really try to think through who I can benefit. And if there are people who completely disagree with what I'm speaking about, there really is no point for us to communicate because we don't listen to each other. I think the point of transformation and what highly sensitive people have figured that you do need like a support group which thinks that, you know, you're okay, you're great, and that you could actually blossom in that group. Because, and this is because most highly sensitive people weren't brought up in these kinds of environments. So we had to deal with a lot of rejection. So some of the rejection that comes from social media, of course, triggers your internal unresolved pain. And for me, I mean, it's not easy, it hurts, but I have many techniques and tools that I use to help me process this pain, because as we know, if something wasn't hurting before this person triggered you, it wouldn't be triggerable. So it's not really the person's fault, although they have to take responsibility how they behave and how they speak. But it's up to me to now deal with the emotion that has arisen. But to that point, I don't see much point in a lot of debates, especially for highly sensitive people, because I feel we need a safe space to grow. Then we can always test our ideas and see if they work. But even for non-highly sensitive people, I don't think that in the very early stages of any kind of transformation or idea development or insight, that debate helps. I think as you are learning, as you're growing, as you're basically kind of taking these little steps into the unknown, you really don't need at that moment somebody to destabilize you. So I know people who, have really worked insularly, people who have made huge impact in the world, and who didn't come out amidst of their research. They come out when they're finished with the product, because it's a vulnerable space and area when you're developing something.
And why are these emotions so important?
Well, I would ask more, why wouldn't they be important? Because if I would ask any human being where they have difficulty or where they have ecstasy, it's related to emotions. Emotions are a part of our self-expression, a part of our self-regulating system. Emotions, the mind, and basically, if people believe in any kind of soul or spiritual basis, those three are are ways of that we interact with the world. And the reason why I'm so dedicated to emotional well-being of my clients and people in general is because I find that emotions have been disregarded a lot. They are allowed in certain areas of life, not allowed in certain areas of life. Certain emotions are okay, certain emotions are not okay. And that already makes a person schizophrenic. It means like, okay, now I'm at work, so I have to close up and I can't share how I feel. Oh, now I go home, so I have to open up and love my wife. Then I have to go to football, and I can't have emotions there because I just have to, be rough with the guys. It's really, I don't think we're made like that. I don't think we're made to compartmentalize our emotions, and I think this world has kind of asked us to do this, which is quite unhealthy. So I see emotions having a comeback, even in like driest possible areas like the corporate, because all this talk about authenticity and courage and innovation, is basically coming to emotions. When you go to the bottom of any innovation, it started with an idea that was fired up by emotion. If we didn't have emotion, we wouldn't really be propelled to do anything. So having healthy emotions and having a healthy emotional self, for me, is like the key for a good life.
So emotions are the new black. I quote
I
your
would
status.
say yes.
Well, how can and how do we learn to feel them and to cope and process them?